Are you fearing a new future where big tech companies push you out of business? Where the Amazon of legal services makes you and your firm obsolete? My guest and I are here to tell you to put those fears to bed. We're joined by Conrad Saam, the founder of Mockingbird Marketing, an agency focused on marketing for the legal industry. He previously spent 6 years running marketing for Avvo, and he really gets the role big tech and automation can and will play in the legal services market. Conrad joins us this week to discuss the future of big tech in the legal space. When LegalZoom recently started a practice in Arizona, alarm bells started going off for lawyers around the country. They're afraid of the Amazonification or the Walmartification of law, and possibly being made both redundant and overpriced. Conrad and I are going to discuss why these fears are unfounded and how big tech can actually expand the whole market for legal services. Automated services can make the whole pie bigger instead of just stealing a slice of your pie. We'll talk about the parallels in the medical and even accounting practices that'll prove just this point. So, the sky isn't falling, but you may have to embrace new tech and really think about how you differentiate yourself and your unique value proposition. You're going to enjoy this one, so let's start the show. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chatbots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5-STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Conrad Saam, it is a pleasure to have you join us today.
It's great to be here.
So, Conrad, I asked you on because a few weeks ago I was listening to your podcast with Guy Sakalakis, one that immediately goes to the top of my queue every week.
Thank you.
And you were talking about a story about LegalZoom getting into the actual practice of law market using, I think, some sandbox or whatever in Arizona. And my thought was, while I'm not worried about this, I'm sure there are plenty of lawyers who see this as the death knell for their practices, leading ultimately to them dying penniless and alone in a ditch somewhere in the short-term future. I don't think that's the case, but I wanted to have you on to talk about it because I think there's still hope for all of us.
So is the title for this dystopian law brought to you by LegalZoom?
Brought to you by Clio. No. No, I mean, Clio. No. Yes, dystopian law as brought to you by LegalZoom. Let's go with that.
So I mean, I think that really quickly for those of you who have not been made aware of this, August 2020, Arizona Supreme Court amended rules of professional conduct, basically allowing non-lawyer ownership or partnership in the delivery of legal services, which is, been fundamentally protected for a very, very long time. And I'm honestly surprised that it took this long for this to happen. I would have assumed that LegalZoom was prepped for this and would have been ready to go, not in August, in September of 2020. But what we now have is I think if you look at this from within the legal bubble, it's like, oh, I'm now competing with a large public corporation as opposed to other lawyers. What does that mean for me? That can't be good. And I don't necessarily think that is the case. Um, I think it's change, right? And by the way, it's not just Arizona, Utah, similar. So, and LegalZoom has been operating as a law firm in the UK since 2015. There's also so this is not completely new, although it is new to the market here, and it will make some changes. Although I don't necessarily think those changes are as drastic as our dystopian future, right?
The machines aren't coming for us quite so quickly, and I think that's one of the things to remember is it's a it is a change, but it's not upending things. There are still lawyers who happen to be called barristers and solicitors in the UK who make livings and do fine. This isn't the first time this has happened. There are plenty of examples of other businesses where big money gets in and squeezes out kind of I'll call it the easy competition. If you think about, I mean, my background working in hotels, you've got, I go back to Best Western because they're an easy example. Everybody's familiar with them. They chew up a lot of the market for cost efficient hotel rooms. But I worked at the Four Seasons. Like, there's plenty of space for Four Seasons. They make plenty of money, and they're not really going anywhere. And they have their own level of competition.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, legal is actually the outlier. It's unusual to have businesses that are only owned by, I mean, it's a protective measure. Like, you'll go back to your microeconomics 101, it's a protective measure. And it's unusual to have businesses that aren't owned by, that are only owned by people within those service, right? So it's the most obvious parallel is the medical industry. Most of your doctors do not own their practices, right? Most of your medical professionals work for people who have MBAs. Like, think about this. There's a master's in health administration. Like, you can get an advanced degree in running a hospital. You can't get an advanced degree in running a law firm, right? The advanced degree in running a law firm is running a law firm for 25 years. And then you've learned all the things you need to know. And then you're like, okay, I'm retiring.
And if you happen to hire somebody who has advanced experience running any sort of company that's not a law firm and doesn't happen to be a lawyer, I know in the past, I'm going to just make up whatever I think. Well, I'm not making it up. There have been law firms that have gotten in trouble with the bar because they had a non-lawyer in an executive position, and the bar was getting nervous about it.
Yeah. So, that's changing. It's going away.
Right.
Right.
And it's probably a good thing.
It's so there's interesting ways to look at the good thing. I think there are definitely some winners in this. And I also, frankly, do think there are some losers in this, right? The most obvious, easy metric to look at is compensation. Are lawyers going to make more money or less money, right? Does this mean that all of a sudden all the lawyers become employees and they make less money? In the medical industry, there's a couple of things that you can learn from the medical industry. If you go back to the 70s and you compare doctor income to 2020, it's actually kept up with inflation. It's actually ticked up just a little bit. Now, inflation isn't a perfect metric, but that has basically stayed static. Although, and this is the interesting thing, John, for me, when I looked at medical, the percentage of our GDP that's gone to medical has gone from 7% to 17%, right? And so we're spending more money on healthcare, but doctors aren't making as much. So it's not, and I also don't see like lots of people spending more money on legal, although that's part of where the winners can come from. The argument has often been among technologists, myself included, that you can use technology to expand access to the legal system, right? That has always been the argument. That was the very first conversation I had with Mark Britton back in 2006 about technology and lawyers. And it's a very appealing thought. But the reality is it changes the way that legal service is delivered. And we have to embrace that. So to me, the losers are the small to mid-sized law firms who don't know how to embrace the technology to make the experience better.
Exactly. And we're not we're caught between two poles. You can continue to practice, craft or artisanal law where you pull out your feather quill and start from a blank sheet of parchment and take 85 years to draft anything. At the other end, and what people are probably afraid of, is the Amazonification of the practice of law, where where everybody just goes to a chatbot and gets their law for $9.99 per document or something like that. And the reality is going to be that it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's the lawyers who are the tech enabled ones who can marry both ends of the spectrum to make it work.
Yeah, and I think the Amazonification is it. So there's at least two layers to that. You
Sure.
had Joshua Lennon on here about 2 months ago, and one of the things that you guys talked about was when you're working at Amazon, there's zero slack in the system. Like, it is just an efficient machine. And the reality is, this is the hard part for people to accept. We actually really like the efficient machine as consumers. I really, I ordered some note cards yesterday. They showed up this morning, right? I did that from my house, right? We really like that as consumers. And we need to recognize that the technology can still bring some delight, and you can still deliver delight because of that. Like, I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but like, go back 10 years. The fact that I could order index card and have them delivered to my house, like, that seems like a crazy, crazy thing. But like, we've gone from delight to expectation at this point in time. And so I think, and listen, I'll go back to the medical community. Well, actually, I want to come back to Bezos, because we can talk about accounting as well and pilot. But go back to the medical experience. Your medical experience, your experience at the doctor is much better because of electronic medical records. It's much
Definitely.
better because of the technology, right? And it's not that you hate your doctor. It's not that your doctor feels like they are, a cog in the wheel. You still have the relationship with your doctor. You're still seeking out the best brain surgeon if that's what you need. But the technologies have made the delivery of those services interesting. On the doctor side, the thing that I find fascinating is, and I'm going to, John, I always offend an audience whenever I'm on a podcast. I'm going to do it right now. To any of the doctors listening, the doctors are more Luddite than the lawyers are, right? And I think the legal industry gets unfairly painted with a Luddite brush. There's more technology in the health delivery of healthcare because it is being handled by large, efficient organizations, and so there's a greater adoption and expertise in the technology in the medical sector than there is in the legal sector. And yet most lawyers are still most lawyers are learning as they go of how to put these things together. Like, it's still a very, very new, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of failure. There's a lot of startups coming into the legal industry from a technology perspective, and not all of them are great. And the lawyers are needing to figure this out on their own. As you see bigger organizations like LegalZoom, they will figure this out. They will create a really, really efficient machine. And I think it's important for the attorneys listening to think about, like, how can I use technology again to make my business more efficient and delight my customers more. We're doing it with Zoom right now, right?
Right. I mean, just thinking about that, I've had an ongoing issue with my foot this year, stemming from a marathon I ran at the beginning of the year. When I saw my podiatrist earlier this year, she was using an ultrasound to guide an injection. The thought of her using that piece of technology, the comparison to a lawyer is, well, maybe if we're lucky, he'll use a remarkable to take his notes, so he's not we're not relying on scanning something later. Are we going to at least have something that we can speed up the drafting? Or, it may be as simple as using PowerPoint in the meeting to at least sketch out, for me as an estate planner, this is where the money flows. This is what the plan looks like. It could be much more complicated that, but it could also just be as simple as that, and you're not relying on the handwriting of the child and brother of two doctors.
Right. 100. Like, yes. So it's the technology is, it can just, I've said this over and over again, like it makes the experience better. I mean, bring this back to Bezos and Pilot and money. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, I think we use medical as an interesting parallel. Let's use accounting as another parallel. There's a small firm. It's not even a small firm anymore from a valuation perspective. It's a $1 billion value company. Jeff Bezos put in $100 million into an accounting company called Pilot. Why? Because the accounting industry, more Luddite than legal. So there we go. I'm offending doctors and accountants right now. Super inefficient with their use of technology. And Bezos's perspective is that all of these onesie twosie small accountants around the country are doing a terrible job helping their customers because they're not adapting to or adopting technology as aggressively as they should be. Therefore, there's a huge market for someone to come in with, at scale, understand how to really efficiently run an organization. In this case, it happens to be accounting, to service the hundreds and thousands of small businesses around the country. And for those of you, and for those of you who are owners of law firms, you know just how horrible accounting is, right? It's a nightmare, and many of the delivery of those accounting services for many of you is left wanting, right? And that's exactly why Bezos put in a large amount into an accounting startup.
Right. And guess what? This is not the first major investment in technology competitive to what a CPA does. You might have heard of those other earlier things called H&R Block and TurboTax and all the other things that people use to do the stuff themselves. We still have CPAs, and
so talk about the do it yourself, right? Like you're so this is one of the things where lawyers get really pissed off, right? The do it yourself model, right? Is this going to eat away at my market? So let me go back to what we were talking about earlier. Like technology delivering more services, it increases the market. This is the Mark Britton answer. Like you use technology to reach more people, and that's you're exactly right with the do it yourself model. Hello Divorce just raised $2 million from venture capital. You have a law firm raising money, venture capital money, for the delivery of legal services. That's crazy. So it's certainly, I don't know that it's unprecedented. Like there's a couple, like Axiom Legal raised money back in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. Like there has been venture capital money that's gone into the legal industry, but going directly to a family law attorney whose entire perspective is that they're going to use technology to help, to be the assist for those people who want the DIY approach to divorce. Really, really fascinating. Now, does that mean that family lawyers are going out of business? No, but does it mean that their role shifts fundamentally? Yeah, it does. For some of them, it really does.
Yeah, and there are different options. Unfortunately, we can't just expect that it's going to stay the same as it's always been. It would be, in some ways it's nice, but really that's not your lot. You're not going to get to do the same things the same way forever just because you got this one little protected fiefdom.
Yeah, and it is protected. Like it is the microeconomics. Like we're just trying to limit the number of people who can generate a lot of revenue from an industry. So we talked a little bit about the losers, John, on this. I'd be curious what your thoughts are. And this has happened to doctors. You see the medical profession moving to working for medical companies as opposed to private practice or even small offices. So the percentage of doctors who work in organizations with less than 10 doctors has gone from 61% down to 54% in the last 8 years. So like it's very, very much happening, and there's these changes. The question I would ask you, John, is, and I have my own theory on this. the law firm owner who makes a good, not crazy, but a good living because they're a business owner, is that person should that person be struggling and worrying and not sleeping well at night?
The owner probably has less to worry about than the attorney who's undifferentiated, who, go back far enough. One of our interviews with Mike Whalen, we talk about the value, the replacement value of a professional.
Okay.
If you're the tour guide who is effectively a commodity and could be replaced, or you don't view yourself as anything else in the legal system, you're going to struggle more. Uh, the law firm, the owner themselves, I think that they aren't necessarily going getting mixed up. Only to say, the owners are probably harder to predict than the attorneys who are just coming in every day to grind. Those are the people who are going to be in the biggest problems, because they're going to face how are they potentially getting replaced by technology. The law firm owners, this I see as being broken down of, you've got to find a way to still make yourself valuable in the market. And why am I here? I'm talking about what I learned from working at the Four Seasons and how lawyers need to pick up the right lessons to build, to build the law firm that would have been built by Four Seasons and Disney and Amazon. Why? Those are your competition in some ways, but I also don't want folks picking up well, you need to offer massages and, omelet bars in your law firm, because that's not what people necessarily are going to want, or probably not going to want in big enough numbers. The law firm owners I see as, there are enough smart law firm owners who can adapt and pick up on these changes. I think you said the doctors are now, what, in 56% of them work in firms with fewer than 10? What was that?
54%, right?
That's not zero.
It's not, you're right. It's not zero. It's interestingly accelerating, right? So, the number of doctors who work in private practice, right, is now less than half.
Right.
And that has really changed. But so you said something that I think was really key here, is the owners who don't adapt. Sorry, the owners there. You said there are plenty of owners who can adapt to these changes.
Yes.
I don't disagree with you. The people who I think should be worried are the people who maybe don't realize that they can't adapt, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to
Absolutely.
continue to practice law. And I've had these conversations, like, there's a history of this. I'm a great lawyer. Google doesn't know that I'm a great lawyer. They just notice that someone has more backlinks. Why aren't they sending people to me, right? Well, if that's not how it works, just because they're great.
Right.
So it's the
What have you
people
done for
who,
Google?
what have you done for Google, right? Like, I don't need this marketing thing because I rely on referrals, right? Well, yeah, when people get that referral, they check you out online, right? So, like, these are conversations I've been having for me now. It's in my second decade of this. But the owners who don't adapt to this, those are the people that I think are probably right. I mean, it's what happens when Amazon does a better job at delivering retail experience than most retail stores.
Right. I mean, look, I'm sitting here kind of fumbling with one of my Lego figures. You can see, anybody listening can't see in my background. I still go to the Lego store to pick up sets. Why? Because it's a better experience there than going to Amazon. Like, that's one place where Amazon's not getting my money anymore. Why? They've made it easier and better to go there. It's not always true. Look, toilet paper comes to our house whenever we order it, because that's a fungible commodity, and I don't really care if I get it there or not. The dog food, oh my God, I would much rather pay Amazon to deliver the 50-pound bags of dog food once a month, so I don't have to go to the pet store. That is a much better experience.
So I think maybe for our audience, there are some people who are using technologies in great ways to delight their customers on the legal side. Can you like think about examples of where it's like, wow, this was completely unexpected? And I use Zoom as the example because it's been forced upon us, but there were lawyers doing video conferencing long before COVID hit, right?
Right. And I mean, I'll tell you, even I wasn't doing much of it because before COVID, because things were working out. Now I'm finding myself after a year and a half, I have clients who do want to meet in person.
Yeah.
They're the piece that I'm trying to replicate for in person is, well, I've been used to sharing my screen and watching, clients are watching along with me as we're taking notes so they can see,
Right.
all right, look, I'm drawing this box and we're connecting this. I'm now trying to figure out where on the conference table do I put the monitor so that the clients can see me drawing. And it gets into, the IKEA effect of having them co-create this plan. It's not just here's 100 pages of legal documents. If you can see the plan and visualize the boxes and, oh, this is what we're doing, it makes it much better for them to be a part of that creation. And so I'm now trying to recreate the digital experience in real life.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to note here is like sometimes you mentioned the in-person thing. Like sometimes it really is important to continue meeting in person, right? This is not a full takeover by technology. It's not the
Right.
Zoom robots, right? And I know this because like but pre-COVID I was flying 2 or 3 times a month, and you just have a fundamentally different relationship with people when you're in the same room with them. I think that it's important. Um, on the technology side, I think I mean the Hello Divorce thing for me. For those of you who have not looked into Hello Divorce and what they're doing, do it, because that is one practice area that has figured out how to do this very, very well, by partnering with their clients to help their clients do it yourself. By the way, LegalZoom's doing the same thing, right? They're part. So LegalZoom, this is amazing. Let's bring this back to LegalZoom. 10% of business formations, 10% of business formations happen through LegalZoom, right? So think about the size of that market, and they're basically helping people from a do-it-yourself perspective, right? It is addressing that market who may not have in the past been in that market. So the parallel to Hello Divorce becomes in every single divorce lawyer that I talk to, I have the same conversation, and the conversation is this: Hey, Conrad, we just need more qualified leads. What's a more qualified lead? Well, they need to be able to afford us, right? Like every single time the answer is they need to be able to afford us. And the reality is there's a percentage of the market who will never be able to afford the traditional model of legal services. So the assist with the do-it-yourself is absolutely a new model around that. The other, and there's a company called Justice for Me that will online process financing for that prospective family law client, right? So, yeah, you can rent a car. You can lease a car, but you can't. But you have to put, your $20,000 retainer down on a credit card. Well, people can't do that. But why can't you use technology to process that application for credit in real time, right? And
Right.
those things are available at this point. Again, it's using technology to expand the market for legal services by approaching the way we deliver those legal services fundamentally differently.
And I mean, I reached around to grab a book that I've been reading because when you're talking about these services and the, whether or not people can afford us, this is something I've faced. Like I've intentionally priced myself above market for most of what we do
Right.
to get those certain clients. But then we've got, the marketing we do is generating more leads where people are coming in and they're not qualified. Now, we could just turn them away and say, like, sorry, you don't have enough for us. Or we could find a way to meet them.
Yeah.
And the book I'm reading, and we'll include a link to this, is Positioning for Professionals by Tim Williams. The folks who are coming in who are below, like they're not market qualified or they're not sales qualified in the sense that they can't afford the rack rates for us, but they still need work and they're still willing to pay for it. That's why they picked up the phone and called.
Right.
The
Usually.
thing,
There's
usually,
still the freebie. There's still the tire kickers.
right. But what they were getting at and what I just covered in red ink and lots of stars of, for those services where they're, kind of market level, undifferentiated services, I've got three options. One, I can find some way to add value to that commodity service to make it not a commodity. That doesn't work for them because they were looking for the commodity. Number two, I can find a way to be more efficient at it and then charge less than everybody else. Why? I'm going to go grab that work and I'm going to make sure that I get it, but I need to make sure that it's still valuable. And then option number three is just stop doing it. I remember, I read it again, and I started circling all of it is, no, I don't want to be competitive market price wise for that work. I want to be below the market because if that shows up, I don't want to lose them for price. Now the market, the high end stuff we do it, we're not going to start competing on price for that because that's differentiated. That is not the commodity. But for somebody who is considering a DIY with LegalZoom, we want to start getting our prices down there and be able to just knock it out of the park for those people who just need that simple service.
Yeah, I mean, this is all. So we're talking about non-lawyer ownership of law firms, but this has happened with law firms. This has happened with so in personal injury with the big. I call this Walmart of law, right? The personal injury industry when it comes to pay-per-click, and everyone's heard the horrific stories about $100 per click, blah blah blah. I deal with this all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
The cost per client can run north of 40%, which basically means if the client's worth $10,000, you're going to spend $4,000 through pay-per-click in order to acquire that client. Now, technology comes into play and efficiency in two very, very important ways here. The first is if you're taking a 40% cost per client, you need to make sure that you are very efficient with every single possible lead and you don't drop the ball at all, right? And so everyone comes in, everyone gets responded to quickly, everyone has a good experience, and that is key to this. The other part of the efficiency is on the law firm operating side, and that means that it is a machine, right? And they are super, super efficient. They settle everything. They don't go to trial. Like it is just and this is the Amazon approach. You make very low margins and you make up for it in volume, right? And that is exactly what Amazon does. So it's not like this push towards business acumen and efficiency and the leveraging of technology to make those things happen. It's not like that has not existed in the legal industry. It's just that we have new players coming into the legal industry where that's more of their focus, right? And so, the big advertisers in the PI space have to run massively efficient organizations. Otherwise, they can't afford their large advertising budgets.
Right. And, until Jeff Bezos makes the investment in going back, analyzing all of the cases, figuring out what every case is worth so that you can have the chatbot figure out what you're worth. And, look, you have this injury. We're going to target all our PPCs just for that. Now, that's obviously a bigger investment, but just the thought that that's going to be out there, that's what's silently stalking all of us in one way or another as lawyers.
Yeah. I wonder when, I'm in Seattle. I have I have friends who work in kind of the local and the small business side of Amazon. And I wonder when that's going to raise its head, right? It's not crazy. And by the way, it's not just Amazon. Like all these large consultancies, they're looking at the legal industry, right? They know you see the inefficiencies. The reason the legal industry is attractive here, the reason we're having this conversation, John, is because in many cases, the legal industry, the management, the running of legal industry businesses is so unbelievably inefficient and poorly managed. And that's why there's opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I would get out of your practice.
And the other side of it is, treat the CPAs as your canary in the coal mine. The reason Bezos is investing there are way more CPAs than there are lawyers. The big four accounting firms have hundreds of thousands of employees. The, AmLaw 100, they've got a couple thousand per, maybe 5 or 10,000. It's just a matter of time before they kind of chew through the CPAs and then get to us.
So, and like, again, I would look at like the reason that Pilot is a really good analogy, John, for me is Bezos isn't going after Pilot is focused on the small businesses,
Yep.
right? And that's where and the small businesses typically have small accountants, right? I can speak for myself on that one, right?
Right.
And it's those onesie twosies that are focused on being accountants, or in the doctor side focused on being doctors. They're probably great accountants and great doctors, but they're not running their businesses very well. And that's why there's an opportunity, because it is a very, very distributed market in the accounting world and in a lot of the legal world. But take Hello Divorce. I keep coming back to them, but like there's lots of really small divorce firms out there. It's very, very distributed, right? And many of them are not poorly run, which means that if you can bring in a very well run organization at scale, you can deliver those services, A, at a lower cost, or B, at a much greater delight. I keep saying the word delight. I need a buzzer. Every time I say delight, you can just like shock me. But it's delivered in a much better manner, in the same way that Amazon delighted customers with delivery. Four Seasons, you've used that example all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
Right. And it's the thought that how many mom and pop motels and hotels do you ever stay at? I mean, put aside if you're staying at an Airbnb, if you're going to stay anywhere that is a motel or a hotel, you're going to a big name player that has squashed, along with their competitors, the one-offs. You might find some bed and breakfast here and there. Those are the exceptions, not the rule.
And again, it's the scale. There's brand awareness. You know what you're getting at the Four Seasons. Like, you don't have to roll the dice on a great experience, but it's the scale to deliver a great experience. And so, to the lawyers listening, I would come back to this thought. What is it you need to do within your practice area, or how you practice law, or what can you use to expand the reach of whom you can actually help through the use of technology, efficiency, and kind of, for want of a much better term, better business acumen.
Conrad, I think that's a great place to end the conversation for now. Where can our dear listeners find you on the internet? I know you've got at least a couple podcasts.
Yeah, so you can find me on Lantero Legal Marketing. I do a bunch of guest podcasts. By the way, hey, thanks for having me on. I'm trying to build my career, so the only thing I do is talk. Right? Talk and write. If that's all I do, like that, I'm super happy. So I appreciate being on. But you can find, I have a unique, on the SEO side of things, I have a very unique name. The last name is Saam. So if you look for Conrad Saam, I'm the only one out there. And if you can't find me, then I am not doing a good job at what I do.
Perfect. Well, we'll include links just to make it easy on the listeners. Conrad, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcounsel.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcounsel.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.